In May 2022, Scott's Thoughts completed an Abra run at 4 hours and 2 minutes. I decided I was going to try to cut that in half. Let's see what I was able to do. Now, when I set that time, I had no idea if it was possible or not. And Scott, what's your reaction when you hear that I'm trying to cut it in half?
I really don't want you. I didn't want you to do this because the Abra run for me was incredibly painful. The early game is so awful for this thing because you would think it would be good. It has a high special stat. All of its other stats are terrible. 25 HP, 20 attack, 15 defense. By the way, this is the second lowest defense stat in the entire game. It has 90 special, 90 speed, which gives it a 17.58% chance to crit, and it has 105 special attack, or special, so it's used defensively and offensively in Generation 1. It's very capable in terms of special and speed, but absolutely terrible at everything else. The only problem is no confusion at the beginning. You are stuck with only teleport, and it learns no new moves by level up. So you can't even get to level 16 like Kadabra and Alakazam and then learn Confusion.
Gosh, Confusion would be a total game changer if there was access to it. By the way, I just wanted to point out a fun little thing. Already, we've got some sort of unique flavor here with Abra. It's only this line, I think, that starts with Teleport. You save a little bit of time warping back from Pewter back to Pallet Town. So surely with time savings like that, oh gosh, as I jump over a rail.
I was about to say, it's like time savings. You jump down, talk to the sign almost. These potions that you're purchasing here are incredibly important. The early game resource that Abra is trying to manage, and this is what I found during my first run with it, is that HP is the most critical resource. And in order to fund Abra's use of HP for struggle, it has to buy potions. So then money becomes very important and potions become very important. And I wasn't able to stretch my money long enough, so I got stuck teleporting, depleting my PP on wild Pokemon to continue training. But I can already see that you have found a different way around this.
Yeah, we're going to get there eventually, but the goal of the early game is to train as efficiently as possible, as long as possible, before we have to start spamming teleport. Obviously, once we have to start spamming teleport on wilds, it's going to slow things down to a crawl. So we've already started trying to be more efficient here by first buying all of those potions when we have exact change. It may sound silly, but Pokedollars don't normally matter that much in a regular run. For Abra, it's super important. So being able to spend exactly 3,000 Pokedollars on 10 Pokeballs means that later, once we are ready to knock out trainers, we can accumulate that money without having lost anything to these blackout grinds that I'm doing now against the Caterpie Sandwich Trainer.
And I think people might not be absolutely aware of why this is much faster. In a wild battle, when you teleport, you're wasting the time from the intro animation into the wild battle, and then the outro animation where it says like Abra fled the battle, and then it fades to white and fades back in the overworld. All of that time really accumulates, and you don't have to do that here. You just spam out teleport, and it just fails over and over again very quickly on the Metapod, and then you knock out the Metapod, gaining some experience, and you can rinse and repeat over and over again.
Yeah, the animation into and out of a wild battle, I think, is roughly comparable to about how long it takes for a move. So you figure spamming 3 teleports in battle is about the same time as 1 teleport to enter a battle against the wild and then to leave it. So it's very significant, the time savings, when you're able to do this.
There's also another component to the time saving there, which is wild battles don't always show up at an even frequency. It's not like every step you take in the grass you get a new encounter. Sometimes you can walk around for 3 or 4 seconds and nothing shows up, and that's very inefficient, whereas this is precise. You know how long it takes you from Viridian City to get back to this trainer, to defeat him, to get experience, and you don't have to use any potions while doing it. I did see that you sent me a screenshot of you losing this battle. So
yeah.
Tell me what's required in order to win, especially when Abra's at level 5 at the beginning.
You only need 1 crit, so you're likely to win, but I did have to restart a playthrough once or twice because I lost on the very first attempt. Now, I'm not going to restart for a perfect run on Abra, that's like not feasible. But when you're in your first 2 or 3 minutes, why not just restart the whole playthrough? But it's pretty funny because of the way that the rounding happens here. You actually will get to the point where you're only doing like 1 damage to the Metapod, and you're taking 1 back with all the hardens set up if you're not critting, right? So if you see here, when we hit, we're only going to take 1 in recoil, but at level 5, we're also only doing 1 damage. Now with crits, we're taking out big chunks even at level 5, but if you trade 1 for 1, the Metapod actually has slightly more HP than Abra does. So if you don't get at least 1 crit because of the way the rounding works, you will lose that first battle.
Just so everyone's aware, everything or almost everything in these Pokemon games, Gen 1 especially, they floor a lot of the calculations because the Game Boy couldn't store the like floating point values in its memory. So you just lose any decimal values. So if it isn't doing exactly 2 damage, it's doing 1.99 damage. It rounds down to 1. Then Abra deals at least 1 damage of recoil to itself no matter what. So it's going to deal 1 damage to the Metapod and then 1 damage to itself in a scenario like that, which wouldn't be as good as dealing 2 damage to the Metapod and taking 1 damage in recoil.
Yep, and we might be getting ahead of ourselves a little bit, but it's something to keep in mind later for Brock. The amount of damage that you do to Brock is very important for how much you're taking back.
Yeah, the goal with Struggle is always... I think I'm like, am I going to do math wrong live? So tell me if I do. But you always wanted to be doing odd numbers of damage so that you take the favorable rounding.
That's right. So doing 3 damage is a lot better than doing 2 damage because not only are you damaging faster, but you're taking 1 recoil in either case. So there's actually an argument to be made in some cases that it might be better to do 3 damage than to do 4 damage because you're taking 2 damage from every struggle if you're doing 4, whereas you're only taking 1 damage for 3. So definitely odd is a good place to be when you're hitting with struggle.
I am realizing something about this fight because I just saw you critical hit the Metapod. This fight is on a timer because you have no way to ensure that you're always going to lose. There's no way to make it so this Caterpie gets a crit and knocks you out. So in this scenario, you're knocking yourself out, but at some point Abra will have enough health to defeat the final Metapod, and then you will no longer have access to this tactic anymore. When does that usually happen?
It's coming up soon, unfortunately. I think around level 12 or 13 is when we start to really have good chances of winning. And by good chances of winning, I mean you don't want to win, but you're going to because you don't really have control over it. If you accidentally get too good of luck, like the Caterpie never goes for tackle, it only string shots, and you win this too early, it's actually kind of devastating. Like it can cost you a couple minutes at the Brock split because this is some of the most efficient training we're going to get. Once we beat this trainer, there's no coming back to him later. I tried doing similar things with other trainers and it really just doesn't quite work out later on. Like I tried it against the Nidoran last, against the Yellow exclusive trainer. It just doesn't work as consistently as it does here because they all have a lead which can attack you. The reason this is so effective is because that first Metapod is only spamming Harden, so you're guaranteed some experience, and then it's icing on the cake when you get the Caterpie. But of course, you really don't want to beat that last Metapod. You'd love this to go as long as possible.
Yeah. Did you? I wanted to ask this question. How long did you spend optimizing and working on this Abra run in general? And I'm curious if in that time you spent working on Abra, did you ever restart a run because you beat this guy too early because you got lots of critical hits or something like that?
Oh, Scott, you know me too well. Yeah, I did. I did. One time, at least one time, I got way too lucky, beat him at a lower level, and then I was like, all right, dead run. It started over. But yeah, no, this was see how close we are to winning now at level 12. So it's happening soon, whether we like it or not. But the amount of effort,
one thing,
Scott.
Just a second before you talk about all the effort, I do want to mention just to everyone, if you knock out the final Metapod at the same time that Abra is knocked out and the fight is technically a tie, the player blacks out and loses and can fight the trainer again. So if you knock yourself out while you knock the Metapod out, that still allows this interaction to continue.
Which is a really good reason to not pick up a Pidgey in the forest yet.
Yeah. Okay, now tell us how painful was this?
Oh, super painful. Thank you for asking. Yeah, it was like probably a 3-week process or so from when I decided like, okay, I'm going to do my first run and, start looking at damage ranges and versus when I actually got a run that I was satisfied with, and by the way, that was the tie scenario you're talking about. So that tie lets us do this one more time. But yeah, I mean, it wears on you, dude, after a while. All the effort that it took, both in the planning and the execution, when you're not getting the luck to align, when maybe you get tired and misplay. Like after a couple weeks of this, I started streaming every attempt on your Discord, right? For Smash Math and Retrogosi and Elite Four Alex, any of the like hardcore kind of community members that like to do their own runs. I had a lot of times a handful of people on there just experiencing this with me because misery loves company.
Yeah, I would notice, I would just be doing something on my computer, maybe working on some software or something, and then I would see the little streaming icon on the Discord and be like, oh, who's that? I'd look over, oh, Zealous Pawn again, playing more Abra. Yeah.
Yep. Okay, we have big developments here, Scott.
Yes.
We have defeated the trainer, and we got to almost level 14, which is pretty acceptable. This is normal. This is about when we expect it to happen. Of course, maybe we could have gotten lucky one or two more times, but you can see that I'm running away from some encounters. Depending on where we are level wise, it will make more or less sense to fight certain trainers that can do damage to us. Sorry, wild Pokemon. In this case, we're looking for Metapods, but you saw I also accepted like a level 3 Caterpie because it's not going to hit very hard. So there's some decision making happening now. Eventually we'll get to a point where I can basically fight pretty much any wild that shows up, but we're so weak right now, even at level 14. We still have to be judicious in who we fight.
This is one of the biggest differences between Kadabra and Alakazam, actually, is that as the line evolves, the marginal improvements to each of the Pokemon's attack stats really helps in the early game because you do more damage to these Pokemon. Also, the marginal improvement to defense stat really helps because you take less damage from like a Pidgey going for Gust. With Abra, like you just said, like you don't want to fight the level 8 Pidgey in the forest at this level because you're just going to take a bunch of damage and that's wasting your precious HP resource.
Mm-hmm. And it was a little subtle there. You at home, I don't know if you noticed that. Keen-eyed among you will have noticed that I'm fighting this trainer, but I actually went and fought a couple wild Pokemon first. And you might think, well, why are you doing that? The trainer was right there. I was trying to line up my health closely with a potion, just like that, where I could use a potion to get close to full health. Well, not like each potion is a very valuable resource is what I'm trying to get at, right?
Yeah,
and I needed to be close to full health in order to beat that trainer.
Yeah. He's trying to extract the maximum amount of value out of each potion. You don't want to use a potion if it heals 15 points of health because you wasted 5 points of potential healing. So sometimes you need to go down below the threshold. So like right now, if you have 38 total health, you want to be at 18 health before you use a potion. Like right here, it's perfect. Full health, now you can fight this trainer and you'll get the maximum usage out of a potion as well as then being most prepared for this trainer because you don't want to fight a trainer and have like half health and then lose and then you have to spam out teleport again on wild Pokemon. That's a way to have a run die very quickly.
And it looked fine there, but sometimes even at this level, like it could get sketchy if you're not quite at full health. As I get to use teleport again, that's pretty fun, huh?
It is. It's nice to see the move getting use.
By the way, I want to bring your attention to the bottom left here, Scott.
Yes.
I've got the stat experience, and this is a very rich stat experience area. This is an adjustment that I made late into my attempts. We can get more into the specifics of the math later, but keep this in mind when we look at the math later for stat experience, that this is because the Pokemon are lower level, we get more stat experience per raw experience, and that's why I'm doing this little chunk of training here before fighting the optional rival.
Yeah, the way stat experience works in Generation 1 is it takes the enemy Pokemon's base stats and adds each one of those base stats to the stat experience quantity when the Pokemon is defeated. So knocking out a Mankey, for example, will give you 80 attack stat experience. And you get stat experience for every single stat every time you do a battle. It's not like EVs in future generations where you only get specific stats from specific Pokemon. So you can see all of those stat experience quantities are going up after each one of these individual battles. And the fact that the Pokemon are at lower levels means that you get to gain more stat experience because each individual Pokemon gives less experience points per battle. Like if you fight the Pidgeotto in Viridian Forest, you only get one bundle of stat experience, but you get like 145 experience from that one fight. But over here, you're getting like 30 per fight.
And I'm choosing to do this training now because the Pokemon that are a lower level, there's a lot of level 2 and level 3 Pokemon that I'm getting one-shots on. Later on, it will be the case that I can get a lot of one-shots in the forest, but right now that's not really the case. And so I'm prioritizing doing this training while we can do the other training in the forest a little more efficiently after a few more levels.
That makes a lot of sense too, because in the forest, like if you're not going to one-shot, say, the level 8 Pidgey, then do you have to run away from the level 8 Pidgey to avoid having your HP lowered by Gust? That doesn't seem worth it because you just used your last potion.
Yep.
So this is why it's been so critical to conserve HP during the early game. Are you always going to fight the rival here at like level 16?
Yeah. I mean, there's a little bit of variability, right, with how much experience you get, but it's pretty much always going to be around there. And the reason I'm fighting him now, and I extended with the training for so long, as you can see it, I'm here picking up 5 Pokeballs. And so this is a nice little touch. I think you did this in your run 4 years ago, Scott, but I'm not sure that it was as optimized because I think the money wasn't quite mapped out. It was just a first playthrough where you did this. So this is mapped out where you can see I'm even picking up the hidden antidote and I'm warping back, and I'm going to go ahead and sell these items and getting all the money from the trainers as well as selling all my Pokeballs. I'm able to get another 2 potions instead of just 1. And even squeezing out that 1 extra potion is valuable here.
This was a piece of advice I got when I did my initial Alakazam versus Gengar video. People told me about those potions in Professor Oak's lab, and a lot of people don't even know that they exist because he doesn't just offer them to you. There are actually very specific conditions that you have to meet in order to get those Pokeballs from him. You have to have defeated the rival here on Route 22. You have to have... I think you can't have a Pokeball in your inventory currently, or maybe it's that you can't have caught a Pokemon already, which is another reason not to get the Pidgey.
I think both. Yeah.
Both. And then if those things are untrue, then he will give you the 5 Pokeballs. Basically, like if the player is completely incompetent and has somehow not figured out how to buy a Pokeball or catch a Pokemon, and they have defeated the rival, Oak's like, okay, here you go, 5 Pokeballs. And then once you beat Brock, he will no longer give you the Pokeballs. So that's why you often don't see those items popping up in most playthroughs.
And you know why I knew that you need both of those criteria to be true? Because I was annoyed that I had to run into the forest to pick up the Pokeball afterwards. I wanted to route it so when I was in the forest the first time I could pick up the Pokeball, but then Oak won't give them to you. So I had to do that afterwards.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Makes it a little bit bumpier. And I've noticed this whole section, you've had Viridian City as your waypoint. Mm-hmm. Now you're going into Pewter City to heal, so then you're setting your teleport waypoint here. This does come at the cost now that you have to deplete teleport again.
Yep. And we got to level 17. It was a good run, right? If we were like Kadabra or something and we got Confusion by level 16, all of our woes would have been over by now, and we would have managed it pretty well if by level 16 or 17 we got salvation in the form of a level up move. But no salvation is coming for Abra. Our first TM is Mega Punch, and that's walled behind Brock. So here we are.
And also all of the Route 3 trainers.
Yes.
It's not like we beat Abra gets to beat Brock and then it's yay, it gets Confusion or Mega Punch and it can continue with the run. No, it has to continue struggling throughout the entire next route, which has quite a few Pokemon on it, and there's some teams there with like 3-4 Pokemon on them.
Yeah, and it's not like, I guess any Pokemon that's training for a level to get a level up move and then beat Brock usually just crushes Route 3, right? Like, Voltorb comes to mind, right? Like you're just grinding in the forest over and over again until you get Sonic Boom, and then you can beat Brock, and then Route 3 is not a problem either, right? Sonic Boom carries you. Yeah, we're going to be struggling, and then even when we get Mega Punch, we're not really going to feel over leveled at any point. It's just going to feel like, we're using Abra's attack stat, right? And it's defense stat, so we're using its awful stats until we get Psychic.
I did mention before that Abra's defense stat is the second lowest defense stat in the game, only worse than Jigglypuff. Jigglypuff is 149, and Chansey is the worst. But Abra's attack stat is not much better. It's tied with Metapod. Metapod is the third worst Pokemon, and only Magikarp and Chansey are worse.
Wow.
Yeah. So using Struggle here is quite painful. Another thing we should mention about Struggle, I'll let you talk about that Blackout in a second, but another thing we should mention about Struggle here in this game is it does not deal typeless damage. So when you're fighting Brock, Struggle is resisted because it's a normal move. If Abra had typeless Struggle, I think that it would be able to beat Brock a lot faster than obviously what it has to do here.
Yeah, probably way faster, I would imagine. I mean, even with our low HP stat, it's tough for Abra because we're using its lowest stats in attack, defense, and HP. All of its low stats are really getting abused by Struggle against Brock, right? It's tough. So should we mention the target level, by the way, for Brock? I think.
Yeah. What is your target level?
We're going for level 24. 24 is a weird one because it's in between damage rounding thresholds. It's not 23, it's not 25. But actually, our offensive numbers don't change really, not significantly, between 23 and 25. The main thing is defense. So in conjunction with the amount of stat defense that we need, which is about 6,200 in defense, level 24 will be a difference of taking 4 damage to the Geodude versus 5 damage to the Geodude. So it's a massive difference for your win percentage chances against Brock, which is going to be a long shot, by the way. It's still going to be tough when we go to Brock, but we just hit a minimum level where I think it's possible. And then that's what we're going to do, because training, as you can see right now, it hasn't looked that bad. I mean, it's slow, right? We're at 22 minutes right now, almost level 18, but it's slowing down. And that's the sad thing for Abra, is it just gets harder and harder to train the higher level we get.
So I mentioned that you'd talk about this Blackout. I noticed that you save before this trainer, then you fight him, you defeat the Diglett, and then Blackout to the Sandshrew, and then rinse and repeat, using up all of Teleport's PP, going back to the trainer, saving, defeating Diglett, blacking out to Sandshrew.
Yes.
Why is that loop so effective?
Well, it's the best we got. Diglett, on the one hand, does not give good defensive stat XP. On the other hand, it is quite good for raw experience, and it has low HP itself, so we don't take that much recoil when beating it. The reason I'm saving is just because it has a high crit rate, and if we have the HP mapped out for getting hit by a normal scratch, but then it crits us, we're really sad missing all that experience, having to go through a teleport loop. So I am going to save before him every time until I have a guaranteed KO on the Diglett.
The teleport loop is going to be so much slower than just a quick reset and fighting the Diglett again.
By the way, I want to bring your attention to the bottom right, and I think without maybe knowing, you queued it up for the perfect timing here, because this is an alternative to the Diglett, right? This is another run in the bottom right that I tried previously at level 18. This is with Blackout's the Yellow exclusive trainer in the forest. You notice I'm saving before the fight because here the lead will attack you, right? So I'm trying to save time by spamming teleports out here and taking Blackouts. Actually, this is at level 19 even. So around level 18, level 19, I was looking to see, is this a potential way? Because we're trying to cut your time in half, right, Scott? I mean, from 4 years ago, but still, we're trying to cut it in half, right? So I'm looking for innovation here, right? And in my search for innovation to try to do this, I tested these different ideas at length. But did you see what just happened there?
Yeah.
I took too many tackles. I tied against the Caterpie, not getting any experience, and then I had to reset and do that fight all over again. So the unfortunate truth is, while that is actually a little bit faster to use teleport, if you consistently beat the first Pokemon and then lose to the Metapod after that every time, then it's better than what we're doing here on the main screen that you're seeing, right? It's better than the Diglett loop. Unfortunately,
Okay.
you lose about 20% of the time, and the resets are so slow that it's devastating.
Right. So if we're doing this in like tool assisted speed run where there's no mistakes at all, fighting that trainer would actually be superior to the Diglett guy at this point in the run because you would know you would beat him every single time.
Yep.
But without that assurance, it's not worth it because there's too much downside.
Yeah, and if it was like a 2% chance to lose or something, maybe you skip the saves, you just roll the dice, and if you lose to him once, it's still worth it on average. But that wasn't the case. It was about 20% of the time. And anyone who's used Hydro Pump knows that 20% of the time happens a lot. So it wasn't worth doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I say that, by the way, as a Hydro Pump lover. Whenever, Scott, you're doing these streams in Gen 2 and beyond, I'm always like, hey, have you thought about Rain Dance Hydro Pump?
Yeah. I'm actually thinking about Hydro Pump more often now because of you, because whenever I see it, I'm learning it. I'm like, maybe this will be useful for 1 or 2 Pokemon here and there where I just really need the damage range.
Yeah, I love that. Oh, do you see this sand attack that's happening right now? I got hit by 3 sand attacks by that Pidgey. That's why we weren't fighting the level 8 Pidgeys before.
Yeah, talk to me about the philosophy now at level 18 where you are starting to fight the Pidgey.
Well, you see that I'm like one-shotting the Caterpie now, but the level 3 and level 4 Caterpie really don't give that much experience. So there hits a tipping point where it becomes more worth it to fight the high experience trainers. I keep saying trainers when I mean wild Pokemon. There becomes a time where that's worth it to do it. Even a Pidgeotto, I think, is worth it at this level. The sad truth is that usually you love to see a Pidgeotto when you're training the forest. Pidgeotto is not actually that good for Abra because it has a lot of bulk. You take a lot of damage in recoil. It uses Sand Attack and hits hard with Gust. And it doesn't give good defensive stat experience. So Pidgeotto is not as good as you would think. Even though it's pretty hyped to get the 1% encounter, it's really not that hype for Abra.
That makes sense. Talk to me about fighting wilds in this grass to get rid of a bunch of teleport PP.
All right, you ready for this one?
Yeah.
The grass is closer, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I go there first. And it makes sense to walk through the grass on your way to the forest, right? Yeah, I think you'd agree.
Yes, for sure.
What I'm doing is
you want to get as many encounters as possible.
I'm spamming left and right, back and forth in that grass until I'm perfectly aligned to move south into the forest. That's what I'm doing.
No.
Yeah.
That's such a silly reason. I thought you were going to say that the encounter rate up there is better than in the forest, so you're trying to get wilds up there. But I like that you're trying to line up perfectly and then go down. That is also a fun reason.
In red and blue, it does have a higher encounter rate, but in yellow, it's equivalent. So it doesn't matter if you're going for encounters there or there. So yeah, that's literally why. The other thing is a practical consideration. This sounds so silly. I'm going to sound like so soft when I say this. Your fingers get tired. In a run this long, especially on repeated attempts, moving up and down constantly, sometimes it's just good to run left and right sometimes. I'm not kidding. Yeah. That's the reason. So I run left and right for a while, then run up and down for a while.
Yeah,
do you see that?
Makes sense.
That crit? That's our first reset. That's why we take the save.
Question here. What health are you targeting before fighting the guy with Diglett? Like, do you have a range between like 16 or 14 and 25 or something like that?
Yeah, so I could probably put the damage ranges on in post. At the time, I was locked in. Like, I knew how much damage the Diglett was doing every time. I also want to put on a chart here that Smash Math put together. He helped me optimize and do some of the math behind this. But there are different levels at which we're likely to knock out the Diglett. So right now, it's basically just like a max roll, I think, or a crit. But as our levels go up, starting at level 20, regular rolls will start to knock out the Diglett in one hit. And then we'll have some interesting decisions as we look at how much health we have going into the Diglett fight. Is it worth saving and going for a good roll against the Diglett, or do we want to give ourselves a little more health so that we can tank a hit? Now, the Diglett, I believe, has 22 health, which means we're taking 11 in recoil. But sometimes we'll take 10 in recoil, depending on whether we do even or odd damage on our first roll, right? So even, yeah, in some cases, even if we have 11 health left, because I messed up the math, we could potentially, not 11 plus the amount that a scratch does, right? So say the Diglett's doing 3 damage, right? If we're at 14 health, you think, oh, we're never going to win because without a crit, because we're going to take 11 in recoil, we're going to take 3 from scratch.
Yeah,
we have to crit. It's not the case. Sometimes we'll get odd rolls and only take 10 in recoil.
Yeah.
So we'll see scenarios like that come up. Actually, I don't recall if it happens in these like next 4 levels or something, but certainly it came up while I was doing these runs. And that time we had just enough health to survive a crit.
I think it's also worth stating that the damage that is calculated for recoil, like if the Pokemon, you say you're overkilling, so that you do a crit to the Diglett and it goes down to like 2 health, and then you do the next 2 damage on the next turn, your Pokemon technically has the ability to deal like 11 damage in one hit or 15 damage in one hit. And it's not taking recoil based on the amount that it would have dealt. It only takes recoil based on the amount that it does deal. So
true.
So because of that, like you can line things up where you do odd damage on both turns, and then the rounding is favorable, and you take 2 points less damage fighting the Diglett.
Mm-hmm. Some of you at home may be thinking, like, okay, we're 31 minutes in, and we're only at level 19. We have 4 levels left to go, or 5 levels left to go to get to level 24. Like, is this mind-numbing work? And actually, okay, you could say that, but in a way, it was kind of engaging because this entire time the math is changing. With every level we go up, our damage ranges are changing against the wild Pokemon and against the Diglett, and my health is going up. So I'm trying with each one of these fights, as soon as teleport goes out, I'm trying to map how many more wilds I can fight and what kind of wilds I can fight in my head. I've tried to have a mental model at all times of about how much damage I'm taking, how likely I am to one-shot Pokemon at different levels that I'm running into, and whether I can get to the sweet spot, which is usually right around 15 health for the Diglett.
It's also, this is less mind-numbing because you have a strategy. Whereas when I did it the first time, I did not have a strategy. I think I just beat the Diglett guy really early on with potions. And then I was just teleporting away from Pokemon south of Pewter City, defeating like 5 wild Pokemon, healing in the center, and then rinsing and repeating. And that does become mindless and awful.
Yeah, I could see that. And you see there I had 2 health left when I beat the Diglett. One very small thing I did is the Pokemon in this section right here, which is technically Route 2. I think the patch below the forest and there is the same encounters. It's Route 2 either way. These Pokemon are slightly lower level and lower HP on average than the ones in the forest. And it was a very subtle thing, probably you may not have even noticed unless I pointed out, but when I got to about 23 health, I moved from the forest to Route 2 to get my last encounter to line up around 15 health for the Diglett, and I ended up at 16 health for the Diglett. So this kind of math is like, it is practical, and it's, you know, if you're looking for it, you'll see it all throughout this playthrough.
All these little things, I think they really do matter. You put together this incredibly overwhelming table. When you sent it to me, I was a little bit grumpy, and then I opened it up and it was just like numbers everywhere, and I immediately was just like, oh, I don't want to look at this. But can you walk through this table and how it works? Because it is going through all of these numbers that we're talking about here, because you really have mapped out all of the possible scenarios in the early game.
Yeah, it's a bit much to look at. I created a PER, which is my own custom metric for Abra. I called it the Pokemon Efficiency Rating. For any of you NBA nerds out there like me, you'll know that this is a riff off of the player efficiency rating that executives and analysts use to determine how good a basketball player is. So, hey, if you wanted nerdy references, you're at the right channel. But let's take a step back and maybe look at them one at a time, because looking at all of them together is definitely not the right way to ingest this data. Let's start off with the most basic of these tables, which is my required ratio for experience. And so, Scott, that's the one at the bottom right. This one's real simple.
Just for people like me, this is the yellow one.
Oh, no, it's the fuchsia one.
Oh, I see. Yeah, I can't also do left or right, apparently.
Yeah, it's very little. It's your other right, Scott.
I see, yes.
But good on you for knowing what color fuchsia is. Okay,
you gotta fight Koga there.
Oh, wow, that's true.
Yeah.
Oh, that's actually really embarrassing because, all right, quick aside.
We'll just delete this part.
I did not know what color fuchsia was until recently, despite having played this game for a long time.
Yeah.
And you're right, it didn't occur to me that, yes, it's Fuchsia City. It's so funny. We played this game called Hues and Cues. I don't know if you've heard of it. Or
I know that. Yeah.
You know that game?
Yeah, I know that game.
Yeah. Someone said fuchsia, and I was just looking at the board like, oh, no. Oh, no. That's the worst feeling in the world. For those of you who don't know, it's basically just a board of all the colors, and you're supposed to put your guess for what color someone else is thinking based on an item or a color they pick. They can't say red or something, but they can say fuchsia or violet or one of the more,
Yeah, like Celadon. That would work.
Is Celadon a color?
It is, yeah.
Oh no, I'm getting exposed so bad here. So I'm not really an artsy person. I'm more of a mathy person. But yeah, it's a terrible feeling when you're playing that game. It's a fun game, but like if you just have no idea and you're the one who's supposed to give the first guess for what color it is. Ooh. Okay.
So
anyway.
apparently play Pokemon and then you'll be better at that game, but not always.
Yeah, only if you look up the colors for the cities afterwards. So I think I just leveled up and I'm showing the stat experience there. We're at 3,799 stat experience for defense, specifically defense. That's the important stat for us as we took our second reset there, unfortunately. But the defensive stat experience needs to get up to 6,242. That is the threshold at which if I level up to level 24, I'll have 24 defense. 24 defense is the target level for my defensive stat. So level 24 and 24 defense, easy to remember. I need both of those things in order to only take 4 damage from the Geodude rather than 5 damage from the Geodude. With Struggle being a resisted move, the Geodude's probably going to get about 5 or 6 chances to hit us, depending on crits and misses and stuff like that. But that's obviously a big difference in our win chances if it's doing one extra damage or 1 less damage, right? So that's the key here. We're going for level 24, 24 defense. That requires 6,242 defensive stat experience. And then the other
level 24 takes 10,073 experience points.
Exactly, from level 5.
Got it.
Yep. So if you're already at level 5, you might look at it from level 1 and get a different number. But since we start at level 5, this is the ratio that we need, 1.61. So what does that mean? It means for every defensive stat experience number we get, we need a ratio of 1.61 regular experience. That will put us on parallel paths. Because we're actually optimizing for 2 things here, which I've never done before or since in a playthrough. I did this run a few months ago. I've never gone for a specific amount of stat experience before successfully where that ended up being the best path. Typically, it's like, okay, you could make it work at level 14 with a ton of stat experience, but it's faster than just trying the level 15 and get over the damage rounding threshold. That's usually how this tends to be whenever you explore this kind of option. For Abra, it's not the case. This is way faster than going to level 25 to get the same stats.
I've said many times on stream when people have asked about this, like why not train on specific Pokemon, like knock out Mankey only to get a lot of attack stat experience. And in all of my testing, I have really only ever been able to get 1 stat point higher for Brock. And typically with offensive stats, I just haven't found that has given a noticeable impact for the amount of time that you have to spend finding those Pokemon like the Mankey or whatever to get that stat experience. It always has just seemed faster to just knock out as many Pokemon as possible and then fight Brock over a damage rounding threshold.
Mm-hmm. And I think this is the exception that proves the rule, right? It's almost always better to go for a damage rounding threshold, an extra level, just train more efficiently. Like Diglett is not good for defensive stat experience, right? It's very good for experience, very bad for defensive stat experience. Diglett has a low base stat total and it gives a lot of experience. So for the ratio, Diglett's very bad. So there's a couple ways we could do this. We could say, okay, well, we need a late train to level 24, but Diglett is messing up our ratio. So we just don't fight the Digletts and we fight in the forest and we make it to 24 and it's fine. The other way you could go is say, okay, well, Diglett's bad in this way, but it's great in the other way. So in order to counteract that, we're going to take some slightly less efficient experience training on Route 2. Like I remember when we knocked out right before Rival 2A or 1A,
Yeah.
we knocked out like all those level 2 Nidorans and like the Mankeys and stuff like that. That will kind of bolster our defensive stat experience, get us back on track so that we can actually take the Diglett experience. So it's a little bit of a balancing act here, like a teeter-totter. If we go too far in one direction, we're not gonna hit the right amount of defensive stat experience. If we go too far in the other direction, it's gonna take us forever to get to the level we need.
I do want to note one really small detail here. In Pokemon Yellow, there are no Weedle or Kakuna in the forest. There are Caterpie and Metapod, and you're actually lucky in this interaction because Caterpie has 5 more defense when compared with Weedle. Caterpie's base defense is 35, Weedle's is 30, and the same is true, I believe, for Metapod and Kakuna. Let me just check. Yeah, Metapod has 5 more defense when compared with Kakuna. If you were running into Weedle and Kakuna, you would get less stat experience, but you would also be playing Red or Blue, and then Brock's Pokemon would be 2 levels higher.
Mm-hmm. I think in Red or Blue, we would be fighting in Route 2 more often, and then maybe only transitioning to the forest once we could one-shot the Weedles. I'm guessing that's probably what we would do, but I haven't looked too deep into it. I was obviously focused on Yellow, but yeah, there are definitely key differences. And I would say that while Yellow is generally the harder game, for Abra, Yellow is the easier game because of Brock.
Definitely.
It all comes down to Brock.
The Weedle in the forest alone, if they ever poison you, like that's just a massive time loss right there. The other thing about Red and Blue is that the encounter rate, which you mentioned earlier, in the forest is much worse in Red and Blue, and there are a bunch of tiles that don't even generate encounters. So doing this kind of walking back and forth, spamming out teleport, it's not going to be as effective in Red and Blue as it is here in Yellow.
Yep, definitely. Okay, should we get back to the stats?
Yeah, let's go back.
The math nerds, they want more. They're insatiable. By the way, as a quick aside, I opened my Moltres video with like 12 minutes of math, and I was convinced everyone was going to turn off after 2 minutes. I was like, look, I want to do it because I'm a math nerd. But no, it's actually like a lot of people out there are like me. The Moltres video did pretty well. So shout out to all my fellow math nerds who enjoyed the 12-minute math lesson before the Pokemon last time.
I thought it was great.
Yeah. It's I love getting into the weeds. So let's get back into the weeds. Okay, I mapped out the defensive stat experience for each Pokemon, and this is very straightforward as well, right? So as we look at each of these charts individually, we're going to build it, and each one should make sense independently, and then hopefully the final result makes sense too. Defensive stat experience is just a score on how much base stat they have, right? Because that's how stat experience is calculated. So pretty straightforward. Metapod has 55 base defense, so it gives 55 stat experience every time you knock one out. Pidgeot also has 55 defensive stat experience, which means it's really not good from a stat experience perspective. The ratio is not good. Funny enough, Rattata does give pretty decent defensive stat experience, even though it's not a good defensive Pokemon, because it gives low experience, but 35 base defense is not the worst compared to these other Pokemon that we're knocking out. So that should be pretty straightforward. I think everyone should probably intuit what this means. So let's move on and we'll look at the HP. This is just a chart with the amount of HP that wild Pokemon have. Now, there's a little bit of variance, right? Because while all the trainer Pokemon have the same distribution, like they're, help me out here. Is it
Yeah, I got
IVs?
it. Yeah, DVs, their determinate values are all the same for every trainer in the entire game. 8 HP, 9 attack, and then 8 in everything else. So 9 in attack, 8 in everything else.
Right, whereas it's random for wild Pokemon, right? So you might
Correct.
get some really good stats, some really bad stats. So I put together a table.
There's one trainer in the game who says like trainer Pokemon are better than wild Pokemon, and that is not true. You'll find a lot of wild Pokemon that are better than the trainer Pokemon in these games.
Mm-hmm. Right. I guess all the trainers have like slightly above average Pokemon, right?
Yes.
So this HP is going to be useful for us to know how much recoil we're taking, right?
Yep.
So let's look at this next chart here, which is recoil plus damage taken estimate. Now this one is when we stop going from like scientific hard numbers to a little bit more interpretation is added into this. Let me tell you why. Because we're not going to one-shot all of these Pokemon.
Yeah.
So when I did an estimate, I am taking into account how much health they have, but also whether or not I think they're going to get a chance to hit me or not. So against Pidgeotto, for instance, I estimated that we would take 22 damage. Pidgeotto has between 30 and 33 health. So my estimate there is I'm thinking I'm going to take about 8 to 11 damage from its attacks. Using Gust, using Sand Attack, and getting more chances for Gust. I'm doing an estimate there. And that will matter a little bit what level I'm at too, right? If I encounter it at level 16 versus encounter it at level 22, it will get probably fewer chances to attack. It'll do less damage. So this is an estimate. It's a useful estimate, but it is an estimate, right? These are fuzzier numbers. This is not quite hard science.
Mm-hmm. Knowing that this is the amount that Pidgeotto is going to do to you. Normally when you find the Pidgeotto in the forest, you're just like, yay, I get this huge 145 experience all at once. It's basically as good as the Diglett. You're really happy. It speeds up your Brock Split. In this case, you're kind of painting the picture for me that the Pidgeotto is not actually the best Pokemon to fight.
I think that's an accurate picture. Actually, Smash Math was telling me he thought I should always run away from it.
That would have been my suggestion because it has Sand Attack, and I absolutely hate when I get my hopes up. Then it hits me like 4 times with Sand Attack, and then I just waste time because I have to run away anyways.
The experience yields are so juicy, though, that it's going to be a judgment call for me. So depending on where I think I am for defensive stat experience, that's going to inform my decision on whether or not I fight a Pidgeotto or run away from it.
How did you track your defensive stat experience during this section of the game?
I just teleported away from a Pidgeotto there, by the way. I don't know if you saw that.
I did, yeah.
Yeah, it's painful if you actually want to beat it, but yeah, it's fine.
Yeah.
This is going to happen 1% of the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, Scott. What was your question? I saw a Pidgeotto.
My question was, like, how do you keep track of your defensive stat experience in this section of the game?
Oh, your overlay.
Okay, yeah, so you're watching the overlay, but like, do you have like I think I'm asking a more deep question, like,
yeah,
do you have like a chart where it's like, at this level I should be around this stat experience, at this level I should be around this stat experience, or is it more by feel?
Oh, yes, I understand your question. Well, at first I was kind of just fighting and seeing where I landed, my first couple attempts, but then I got a feel for about where I needed to be. And once I came up with that ratio, right, that 1.61 required ratio, at that point I started doing calculations in my follow-up playthroughs, right? So if I'm at, like, I do it right after a level up, right? So I looked up how much experience it takes to get from each level, right? So say I'm about to turn level 22, right? So I would pause the game.
Oh, no.
I would say, okay, I have X amount of experience left to get to 23, then 24. I have X amount of defensive stat experience left. What's that ratio? If it's close to 1.6, then I know that I'm on track, right? What I'm doing is working.
That makes sense.
If
See,
it's
as soon as
worse
you said
than that, more experience. Yeah, if it's worse than that, then I'm going to like Route 2. I'm like not fighting in the forest anymore.
Would you ever say run away from like the Caterpie and the Pidgeotto and just fight the Metapod in the forest if you're behind on defense stat experience?
Funny enough, no, because Metapod, you might think that it's really good for defensive stat experience, but it's not, because it also gives better experience. So the ratio is actually very similar to Caterpie, hilariously. What I would do is I'd stop fighting the Diglett, which is painful, but Diglett is great from an experience perspective and terrible from a defensive stat experience perspective. So I just fight one or two more wilds instead of the Diglett, and that's what I'd have to do.
That makes sense. By the way, as soon as you said that, everything about this chart clicked for me, and then I thought, oh, yeah, we can just write a little script that will print out our required ratio every time we gain experience. And then you said you just pause the game and just calculate it manually.
Yeah, I mean, if it was applicable for more Pokemon, maybe that would be worth it. I mean, that would be a really cool feature, but I don't think it would be a very often used feature, right? Because it's
very true.
Abra's very like, it's unique in this way, right? It's its own animal. Like no other Pokemon that I've played has operated like this. And maybe now that we're aware of it, we'll find other types of uses for it. Like when I ran Gyarados the other day, that will probably be a video on my channel, by the way, at some point. I tackle Gyarados. I tried to make it work with stat experience, and it turns out that it's just not faster. You're a level lower and you're 30 seconds behind if you do it with stat experience instead of an extra level. So
too bad it doesn't work.
Yeah.
I think the only other Pokemon that remind me similarly to Abra where they need defensive stat experience are electric types for the champion's Magneton. The champion's Sandslash. You just want to be able to survive earthquakes, 3 earthquakes or something like that after Reflect. Defensive stat experience can be very important for those Pokemon, but it's almost always the case that Pokemon that are trying to optimize their stat experience or EVs are optimizing for the offensive ranges. So I think Abra is unique in that it is using stat experience in the early game, and it is also using a less common stat experience quantity or category. Because like normally you're like, oh, I want special or I want attack. I think about this all the time in later generations. Trying to get attack EVs, trying to get special EVs, sometimes even speed EVs, but very rarely thinking about defense EVs or defense stat experience.
Yeah, this is the first and only time so far that I have thought about defensive stat experience for Brock. But
how tight is it?
Pretty tight. It's pretty tight. That's why I added the Route 2 section. Without the Route 2 section, I did miss it a couple times.
That's got to be painful. Did you restart those runs?
No, I tried Brock anyway and just hoped. and usually it didn't go well. I missed it 2 or 3 times out of like 7 attempts, I want to say. It's on a knife's edge, right? Because I set this ridiculous goal for myself of sub 2 hours, right? And I was like, well, that's only going to happen if I do a great job at Brock, right? So I was just cutting every corner, trying to get exactly enough experience to line up. I'm trying for the 1.61, right?
Yeah.
I'm not trying to get 7,000 defensive stat experience. And it's like, oh yeah, I had plenty of stat experience. That's great. No, because that means I was training inefficiently, right? I'm trying to ride that line as much as possible to be as close to 1.61 as I can.
Yeah, you don't want to be on either side of it. You want to be right on it. So that you have exactly what you need to get the damage ranges, but not too much. Because if you do overinvest in the defense stat experience, like that will probably mean that you're getting less stat experience of the other quantities. To some extent, depending on which Pokemon you're fighting. Or if you're overinvesting in experience and you're under on defense, then you're going to have a really bad time at Brock. And I wanted to mention that specifically because we've gone almost an hour now without really going through anything about Brock other than the level you need to fight him. What is the chance when you do get to Brock with the proper stat experience? What's the chance that you beat him?
Less than 5%.
Less than 5%, so like 1 in 20 or worse.
Yeah, I did 100 trials and I won 4 times.
Oh, that's painful. So 4% of the time you're winning.
Well, at least in that, it's hard to say, right? Because it's
true.
only 100 trials. Only 100 trials. But it's hard to tell if it's a low percentage. Like, okay, that could have been 10% or 1%. If you get it 4%, I think it's probably 5% or less. It felt like it was pretty representative. It's brutal, man. Like after I did all the optimizations and I was looking for a good run and I had even practiced, I was like, it was go time, right? Like I was trying to put up a PB. One time I had a Brock split that was 30 minutes behind. And it's just
30 minutes behind.
I was so demoralized I just didn't even finish the run. Just quit.
That is so rough.
Yeah.
How long does each reset take to Brock? So when you do fail, how much time does that give up?
It depends. So I know that's kind of a lame answer, but I realized that if I played out every fight to the death, so to speak, I was losing time. So I learned after a certain amount of time that when I was doing these real runs, when I was going for a PB, not like when I was testing how many out of 100, but when I realized that the chances to win are really low and I got off to a bad start, I just take an immediate reset against the Geodude. So I got to the point where if I didn't have enough health left after Geodude, I wouldn't even try to fight out Onix because resets are very slow. I want to say probably 40 seconds or so if you lose to the Onix, maybe 30. But if you bail on the Geodude, maybe you get away with like a 15-20 second reset.
Right. Right now, like watching this footage, there does seem like there's some ways in which Abra can fail in the early game and have its time messed up. Like you can beat the Metapod guy slightly too early and then you have a worse road ahead of you, or your stat experience isn't lining up properly, so then you've got to go back to Route 22 and fight some wild Pokemon there to get enough stat experience. There are some ways that it can be slowed down, but it doesn't seem like anything that's happening in this section of the run can be slowed down so significantly when compared with how much Brock can ruin the run.
Yeah, we're kind of on rails here. I mean, there are small mistakes I can make, like lining up my health wrong for Diglett, stuff like that. Yeah. I was actually keeping 1 potion in my bag for most of this, or 2 potions, just in case I screwed up my experience, or not experience, but my health. In case I screwed up my health and needed the potion before the Diglett and lined it up again. So that is like maybe a small concession, right? Ideally, you wouldn't do that, but I don't know. I think it might make sense even like if you ran into a Pidgeotto, right, and wanted to beat it and it surprised you how much you took in recoil, it might be nice to have that potion in the bag. Like this, by the way. Yeah. We're going to fight. Look at that. It's almost like I knew, and then I got sand attacked and I got scared and I ran. Yeah, I realized that it was either that or the Diglett. And so I said, okay,
Diglett's probably worth it.
I should have just fought one more wild. I got greedy and then I realized this is not the way.
With so you say you're kind of on rails. That's what it looks like to me. Typically, around what time do you usually get to Brock? Because I'm sure you had that number in your mind.
Yeah, it was usually around 1:15 with upside for being a little faster. Like I think my fastest time to Brock before this was about 1:12, 1:13, something like that.
Right.
So we're getting there as we close in on an hour. It's coming up soon.
Hilariously, I'm like looking at the level. I'm like, we're almost 23. Like we should be there pretty quick. Like maybe 1:04 or something. No, 1:15. It's still quite a ways away.
It's also about 10 minutes per level, which is why I didn't go to level 25. That's why I went to level 24. Brutal.
That makes sense.
At this stage, it's brutal getting one more level. But sorry, you were going to say something.
I will just actually reiterate for people the damage ranges there between 24 and 25. So at 24, Struggle from Abra does 5 to 6 damage to the Geodude and 3 to 4 damage to the Onix. But if we go up to 25, the only number that changes is Struggle now does 7% maximum roll to the Geodude. Everything else is the same. So I guess the critical hit damage from Struggle on the Geodude also changes. It goes up by 1 point. But you're really not getting a lot of there's not a huge improvement there going to 25 over 24 for, like you said, 10 minutes of time invested.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Also,
and 10 minutes, I'd rather roll the dice for 8 minutes against Brock, 10 minutes against Brock to try to get it than, train an extra level and then still have to get lucky, by the way. It's not like the fight becomes easy at level 25.
Yeah. Also, just like for some numbers, if like 10 minutes is, I'm going to do live math, but yeah, no, 10 minutes is 600 seconds. And so if each attempt at Brock, like you said, was like roughly 40 seconds, you're going to get 15 attempts in the time that it would take you to go from level 24 to 25. That's 15 attempts where you have the chance to get that 1 in 20 win against Brock. So I think you're making the right call here, because even if you fight him at level 25, I'm sure you can still lose. So then if you spend 5 attempts fighting him and you lose at level 25, you've done roughly the same amount of time investment with level 25 as you would have for 20 attempts on Brock at level 24.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So definitely made sense to go level 24.
Yeah.
By the way,
plus sometimes resets are really quick. Like the Geodude will crit you on turn 1. You're like, okay, I'm just not going to take this fight. I'll reset right away.
Mm-hmm. By the way, it looks like there's a little bit of lag on my machine. Are you seeing that too, Scott? I might need to pause it just for a second. All right, so Abra just hit level 23 here, and you can see that I put my stat experience on the bottom left. It's crucial, remember, that we get to 6,200 something before I hit level 24 in order to get the defensive stat I need once we level up.
Yeah, that's actually a small like nuance about how stat experience works and is recalculated. It only is recalculated when a vitamin is used, when the Pokemon is withdrawn from the PC, or when the Pokemon levels up.
Yeah, so I think it was so close sometimes that I wasn't even sure. I was like double checking, hoping that if you level up at the same time, like, does that Pokemon stat experience count? And that may seem like a ridiculous thing to check. Oh, by the way, look at the bottom right. This is my attempts against Brock at level 23. This is what I did in my first run. So first run footage, bottom right. When you take 5 damage from the Geodude, look how much those tackles are doing to me. I'm down to like 19 health for the Onix, and that's just almost never going to work.
Yeah, for reference, the Onix has 32 hit points.
Okay,
That's
yeah. So
quite a lot to get through.
That's a lot of missed screeches, Scott.
Yeah.
Now, we're going to need some luck, but if I'm at too low of health, and here it goes for Bide, and I'm at 20 health, and I just say, you know what? Nope, we're going to get one shot by the Bide hitting back. So I think that's probably enough. Like, you can tell level 23 is just never working. I reset for probably about a half hour or so in my first playthrough before I decided I'm going back to the forest to train.
I have a question. Did you test 100 times against Brock at level 23 so that you could compare the two, 24 and 23?
No, but I think I was like 0 for 50 or something like that. So that was good enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It does not look very convincing here. It seems like you need a lot of luck.
And
I
that
could
was
see
a
why.
lucky attempt.
Yeah, I
that
could
last
see why
one-
you might be seduced into it, though, if you're like, well, I could save 10 minutes and just get this ridiculously lucky Brock and then continue with the run.
Yes. If I was like 1 for 50, I might have thought about it, but 0 for 50 is a tough one, you know? And that was
Yeah.
a pretty lucky attempt. Like, the Onix wasted a lot of time in that last one, and it still had about a third of its health left. That can be deceptive. You might think you're really close, but if you're already getting lucky and you're getting to a third, that means you need like an order of magnitude more luck than that to actually, you know, like maybe 10 times luckier in order to win. It's just not where you want to be.
I also think there's some psychological aspect of this, and like just the limits of like us as humans, where it's a little bit difficult to dedicate 3 weeks of your time to playing Abra, knowing that you have like a 1 in 500 chance of beating Brock at level 23 or 22 or whatever you're trying to do to get a ridiculously good time. There is something psychologically attractive of this idea of consistency. That's why it found its way into my videos. The viewers keep mentioning it in the comments. And I know for me, like, you mentioned Gyarados earlier, that is going to be a video on your channel soon. And for me, Gyarados was a Pokemon that I didn't want to play that much in Yellow because the Brock split I felt is slow. But this Abra Brock split is slow on a completely different level. So I would not want to play an inconsistent strategy here for Brock. I think that 23 would just wouldn't be. It's like I couldn't put up with it psychologically.
Yeah. It takes its toll. By the way, I want to mention that I switched back from defensive stat experience to stat experience because we did hit our threshold. So we didn't hit it with a perfect ratio. I went a little too much defensive stat experience, but I'd say this is like overall pretty good. I give myself a B+ for this job of walking the tightrope here, of getting the right amount of experience and defensive stat experience together. I got my threshold at level 23 and a half.
Yeah.
By the way, we have maybe 3 more minutes or something, maybe 5 minutes, somewhere in there before we're projected to hit level 25. I want to go back and finish our charts. We have 2 more left, Scott, and it'll be a shame if we don't get there before Brock. Let's look at the experience first. We can go over that one very quickly. That's just what level you hit these different Pokemon and what their raw experience is. You can see that the outliers are Pidgeotto and Diglett, with Pidgeotto giving 145 experience, Diglett giving 156 experience.
This is why the Diglett training is better, everyone. Like, you can just see in these numbers that the Diglett is so much superior to all of the wild Pokemon. Like, you have to fight the Caterpie that gives 22 experience. You have to fight that Caterpie a ridiculous number of times before you get anywhere close to the amount that the Diglett is giving.
Yeah, 7 times.
Yeah.
I think exactly 7 times. Hilarious. It's a huge difference. Which is why there's an argument to be made later on, if you're in good shape for defensive stat experience, to even just run away like I am right there from a level 3 Caterpie. It doesn't give enough experience. And I know that I have my defensive stat experience already. So I'm prioritizing my valuable health on higher experience yield trainers. I will take the level 6 Caterpie for 45 experience, but I am not interested in the level 3 Caterpie for 22 experience, especially because their health stats aren't that much different from each other.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, last chart, Scott.
Okay.
This is the one that I teased earlier, my Pokemon efficiency rating. This is something I'm proud of. You may have to pause it if you're a statty kind of a nerdy person here, but this is a culmination of all the things we've talked about before. So this is supposed to be one rating, giving an evaluation of how good the Pokemon is to fight for this Abra training. Taking into consideration everything. So what we're doing here is we're adding the raw experience that you get from beating a Pokemon, plus the defensive stat experience that you get for the Pokemon, but we're multiplying that by the required ratio, because defensive stat experience is more important to get than raw experience, because it's more difficult, so it's more important, right? So I'm multiplying that by the ratio, which is 1.61, so that it's weighted higher than the regular experience. We're taking that number and we're dividing it by my kind of admittedly fuzzy, not super scientific damage estimate, right? So each Pokemon, how much damage do I think I'm going to take between recoil and it attacking back? So Metapod shines in this case because we're only taking recoil. Pidgeotto and Diglett get punished here because they do damage back to me with Scratch and Gust and stuff like that, right? So when you consider all the factors that we've discussed together, we have a list of numbers next to each Pokemon, with the higher number being the better number. So my analysis says Metapod is the best thing that we can fight. The second best thing we can fight is Diglett. The third best thing that we can fight is Rattata, Scott.
It's kind of ridiculous. I wouldn't have thought that would be the third best thing to fight, but it makes sense when you described it earlier as like the ratio between its level and the experience that it gives, and then the corresponding stat experience actually makes it favorable.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Although, admittedly, I will say that it's a distant third. So Metapod is the best. Diglett is very close.
Yeah.
And then everything else is kind of more in a similar category to each other, right? So Rattata, Nidoran female, Pidgeotto, they're all kind of in the middle. And those are much more contextual, right? So there are times where you're more happy to face a Caterpie, even though it's got a low number, because you know you can one-shot it like earlier on when you're not one-shotting other stuff.
Yeah.
But it is contextual, but I've split it out. And then I also have my defensive stat experience rating, and that doesn't even consider raw experience if you just want to see how good the defensive stat experience is for each Pokemon. Well, Metapod is quite good there too. I think I may have lied earlier when I said Metapod wasn't much better than Caterpie, but
it's pretty good. Metapod
really
is pretty good. Yeah.
It's really good to train on.
Also, the Diglett shines there for raw experience. You can really see how much better it is than all the other Pokemon. But I think you're about to face
no more time
Brock
for
now.
stats. No more time for stats. We're at
clock
4
is
hours
ticking.
and 30 minutes of game time. Just under 110. This is by far the fastest that I've fought Brock. This is like 2 or 3 minutes faster than I've ever gotten to Brock before. And the attempts are on, Scott. Let's go.
Do you find that like when you're on a time like this, getting to Brock, like are your hands getting sweaty? Are you getting like heart pounding, some like adrenaline?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, it's an hour and 10 minutes of buildup for this moment, and we don't know. Am I going to get a first or second try Brock? Am I going to be stuck here for 30 minutes and hate my life? We don't know.
Yeah. Also, Bide, incredibly painful.
Oh yeah.
Seeing that early on and then getting the crit into it, like.
Yeah. It feels unfair that we're taking recoil twice, basically. Like, we're taking recoil from struggling into Bide, and then it's also paying back. Like, we're just getting wrecked on both sides from Bide. It's really, really brutal.
Now I'm wondering, does Bide have any weird interactions with Struggle? I've never actually thought about that or looked into it. Because it does have weird interactions with stuff like confusion, self-inflicted damage, but...
Unfortunately, I think we're just stuck hitting into it. In some cases, you could try to maybe go for like a speed tie with different Pokemon, but with Abra, we're at 60 speed already, so we're like almost tripling its speed stat. I don't think there are any shenanigans, unfortunately. We have to, for better or worse, kind of fight them heads up and hope that we get good luck.
I think it's also worth mentioning that right now, if you're going to be able to pull off the feat of cutting my former time more than in half and getting a sub 2 hour time, if that's possible, Abra will have to beat the remainder of the game in less than like 58 minutes.
Yeah, every minute.
Less than 50 minutes.
Less than 48 minutes at this point.
48. That's what I was trying to say.
Yeah, which is pretty fast for a first stage Pokemon. Like, there's not much wiggle room here, and I'm continuing the pile up reset, Scott. But that's 2 crits.
You said something that really was insightful for me about this sort of thing. Even though it doesn't look like you're making progress right now, you are making progress. You're rolling the dice in a very efficient way. And like eventually it is going to work out, and then you'll be able to proceed. It might seem like you would be gaining more progress by leveling at this point.
Scott.
Oh, the Bide.
The last Bide.
Okay, so that was like a 1-12-30 Brock split.
Yeah, I'm going to switch to the splits here in a second. But yeah, 112XX Brock is incredible. This is by far the fastest Brock split I've ever gotten.
I do want to mention to everyone else that I think this is like 2 hours or an hour and 45 minutes faster than my Brock split from my first run. I was around the 3 hour mark when I had my Brock split. So much faster early game, like dramatically faster. Yeah, 1:12:33.
And we're not going to slow down now. We're actually going to speed up. But I think it's time for us to take a quick break, Scott. I
Sure.
need to use the restroom because we've been at this for a while.
Yeah.
But let's pause it now and let's come back to it here shortly.
Sure.
All right, and we're back from our short break. And thank you for being here with us. I'm sure it was probably seamless for you. Before I press play and we resume Route 3, I just wanted to give a really quick thank you to the Patreon members that I have. I launched a Patreon pretty recently, and I've got 3 members already. So thank you to George Summer and Robert Abackery. Thanks so much. I recently added a new tier, by the way, too, if you want to pick my next run. So check it out if you're so inclined. And Scott, let's get back to it.
Let's go. On Route 3. Yeah. Like, are there dangers here, like poison from the Ekans? So you saved before that so that you can get rid of the poison?
Yeah. Health is a little tight here. So actually, like, even if you get crit or something, things can go poorly, or you just get so little health that you don't have enough potions to finish. So I'm saving before each fight just in case I get the bad scenario.
Yeah, because the sell price for Bide, the TM that you get from Brock, is only $1,000. So you don't actually get a lot of potions from winning against Brock, getting the prize money, and then the TM to sell.
All right, backtracking here. Obviously, we can't backtrack to heal. I'm actually backtracking hilariously to get a couple of potions just so I can beat the last trainer. This
and
is
those were
mapped
your
out.
last 2 potions.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I even saved the antidote from the forest in case we got poisoned earlier, by the way. You had asked me about poison. That's what the one antidote was for at the very beginning.
I did notice that even selling it wouldn't have got you another potion, so keeping it just makes sense.
Yep, I probably would have sold it if it had worked out to give me another potion, but it didn't. So it makes sense to hold it for Route 3 in that case. And we can finally heal.
Yeah, you can heal here because there are no more trainers after that last bug catcher. You can just walk straight through Mount Moon and grab the Mega Punch TM now.
Yep, I want to bring something to your attention when I pick up Mega Punch. Watch my movement here. Do you see the really safe movement? That is something I haven't done since the Mew race until this point. And the reason for that is in the Mew race, I found out that every frame matters. But you had asked me earlier about my psychology in playing after a ridiculously long Brock split like this. And knowing that you're on a great pace, I'm going to make some micro decisions like that throughout this run where how devastating would it be? By the way, that's ridiculous. That's why.
Sorry, yeah, it just cracked me up. It just disables right away and you can't attack anymore.
Yeah. But I'm going to make a bunch of little micro decisions like that, which are just a little bit safe, which is something I hate doing when I push for a great time. But I know that that's because I can't just press restart and then go beat Brock at will, right? I've got a lot of what's the correct word for it? There's a lot of weight on me at this point in the playthrough to play well.
That was something I noticed in the Mew race where you and I talked about this before, but it felt like all of the players in the solo challenge community were speedrunning for the first portion of the game. And then by the end, we had all slowed down and we were playing safely. But Exarian speedran the game at every single moment.
And since that point, I've worked very hard to break myself of that habit. And I actually do try to save frames throughout the entire playthrough. However, the caveat is when you're playing Abra, and the downside of accidentally running into that trainer when you have teleport and you haven't saved recently, and like if you miss Mega Punch and you accidentally run into that Rocket Grunt, like it's such a devastating reset. It costs you a couple minutes and you can't easily restart. It changes the calculation a little bit. If you're running Mew, you just start over. It's, you're 5 minutes in.
I think the other part of this equation, and I definitely experience this on like a day-to-day basis filming my runs, is that what is the end goal? Like, is the goal to get the best Abra time in the world and set a like world record that other people are going to struggle to beat 4 years from now? Or are you just trying to prove that like this sub 2 hour Abra split is possible? And I think in the case that you're trying to prove that the sub 2 hour Abra split is possible, taking that small concession of more conservative movement inside of Mount Moon makes a lot of sense. You have the run that could produce that result right now, why not just hold on to it and keep going and try to give yourself the best possible chance of achieving that result? But if you are trying to get a world record and make a result that people are going to struggle to beat for a long time, then you probably want to speedrun at every possible moment. And if you lose a run, that's just what it is. It's probably going to take you years to get the perfect one anyway.
Mm-hmm. And I'll say now at this point that I did practice the stretch after Brock, so that I'd have experience and I'd be ready for this. You can see that I'm even teleporting back to the center there, which is kind of a fun optimization. But that was
something I noticed when I looked at your route file. You actually keep teleport all the way until Lorelei.
Yeah.
So I assume that you're going to be using it like this in the overworld to move around more quickly than you otherwise would be able to.
Yep. And that's the kind of thing that I probably wouldn't have honed in on had I been doing full attempts only. Like if every time I beat the game is after beating Brock, I probably wouldn't have had the patience to figure out all those nuances. But one thing that we learned going kind of back to the Mew race from a year ago now is that even when Brock is super important, it's not the only important part of a run, right? So I wanted to make sure that I was ready to execute when the time came, and I resumed from replay and did about 5 or 6 full runs just from Brock onwards, independent. So I shouldn't use the word full runs, half runs, I guess, from Brock onwards, to kind of lock in on what I needed to do here.
Yeah. That definitely happens to me a lot where I'm trying to figure out the early game of a Pokemon, and the early game's really brutal, and I spend all this time like resetting over and over again. This usually is on stream when I'm like having a bad day. It's like Paris. And then I get by Brock and I'm like, oh, I don't remember how to play the rest of the playthrough. Yeah. So doing that practice ahead of time really does set you up for success.
Mm-hmm. And you get to learn when you do repeated playthroughs, like when you need to teleport back, when you can push it. So in this case, like the Geodude, sometimes we crit it a couple times, we get through easily. Other times we miss our first couple Mega Punches. It sets up defense curls and it takes forever to get through it. So I learned it was best to just map out the PP. So you teleport back before fighting him and get full Mega Punch PP going into that fight.
Yeah, that makes sense.
One thing I want to highlight here, Scott, is that Seismic Toss is coming up soon. We desperately want Seismic Toss. Do you know what trainer we really need it for?
The juggler in Koga's gym.
Yes, that's very good. That's important, but there's one that's really crucial coming up before that in Rock Tunnel.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
The self-destructing hiker then.
Yeah, the self-destructing hiker with Mega Punch is going to be a big problem. So we basically need Seismic Toss. But the problem is Seismic Toss is walled behind a trainer who has 3 Geodudes.
Yeah, and you just explained why the first guy with 1 Geodude is not fun to fight.
Yes.
So it doesn't really make sense to grab it now.
I would lose to that trainer pretty often. And the resets are like 40 seconds to a minute. Like, there's such long resets against that guy. If you lose to the last Geodude, it's brutal. Because you can run out of PP as well. So like, even if he's just using defense curls and not hitting you, you can miss Mega Punches, not get enough crits, and lose that way too.
Yeah.
So he's absolutely brutal. We're going to have to come back to him.
I also did want to mention that you teleported back from Bill's house, which feels very strange in Yellow version. Because normally you're walking back, since you can't use the escape rope to escape and head back to Cerulean City quickly like you can in Red and Blue.
Yeah, it was fun finding all those little moments where you get to use a teleport to save a couple seconds of time here and there. It may seem like a sunk cost when you've already spent an hour and 15 minutes at Brock or whatever it is, but hey, every couple seconds counts, you know?
And I think it is fairly tight from here, in my opinion, to get the sub 2 hour mark, because I remember playing Abra. I did a ridiculous run in my video where I did I think it was like the Elemental Punches trade back Abra from Gen 2, where I had like Thunder Punch, Ice Punch, and Fire Punch at the beginning of the game. And that Abra steamrolled the whole game. It was like very fast, but it was around, I think, 45 minutes or 40 minutes. So from this moment on, I could see you pulling it off in 45 minutes, but
Yeah,
seems
45
tight.
minutes was about what I thought I would need, but that comes with a couple of asterisks, right?
Hmm.
Because when you're playing with a Pokemon as frail as Abra is, there's lots of things that can go wrong. Like we kind of talked over it, but I took a quick reset to Rival 2 on the bridge, and then
Yes.
following that, I actually accepted a blackout because I got to the last Pokemon and lost 2. So this is not a good pace post Brock so far. Things have been going
Got it.
wrong. I don't think I've made any major misplays, but things can go wrong with Abra when we're still using physical attacks until we get Psychic.
I wanted to mention one thing here, which is I believe Kadabra as well as Alakazam can both learn Dig, but Abra cannot.
Yeah.
Yeah, Kadabra can learn Dig, but Abra can't, so you taught Dig to one of your HM users instead. And then the other difference, or the other thing that I wanted to ask about is Body Slam. You came here to the SSN, you're fighting the rival now, you got Body Slam. What was the thought process around getting Body Slam this early into the run?
Well, I mean, it's better than Mega Punch, right?
Yeah.
It's around the same power, but obviously everyone knows Body Slam's a great move. Ideally, we would have taken on Misty with Seismic Toss, but because we don't have Seismic Toss yet, Body Slam is going to be our answer for Misty.
Okay. And fighting Misty with Mega Punch just didn't feel right. The damage ranges aren't good enough.
It's doable, but actually, and I'm glad you're kind of forcing the analysis out here, Surge was very sketchy. So there's not a lot of upside in fighting Misty first when you have a hard time with Surge, because like Raichu is very bulky. I accidentally answered wrong to the guy in the I hate it when I do that. I do
that all the time.
But I remember to use the teleporter there. Yeah, so Surge very sketchy, right? Hits with Mega Punch, Mega Kick, is very tanky, and we're using physical attack still until we get Psychic. So I'm going to come back and fight Surge later once we have Psychic. If we're doing that, we don't really gain anything by fighting Misty first. We may as well fight her with Body Slam afterwards. You can do it with Mega Punch, but it's safer now.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. And also, if you are going to get Psychic, it's the one scenario where fighting Surge later into the playthrough doesn't actually lose you very much time. Because you're going to walk over to Saffron City to get Psychic pretty quick into the playthrough. And then the walk from Saffron City to Vermilion City is very short. By that point, you have the bike, so you can do it quicker if you're trying to use the bike in that section. But also, then it makes Surge more consistent because you have Psychic for that battle.
Do you see where we're biking, Scott? Check it out.
I do see where. Yeah, it's great. Biking all the way back to get Seismic Toss. Oh, gotta be careful.
Yeah, gotta be careful. There we go.
And then you can use teleport to get back to the center.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Which makes that Seismic Toss pickup for Abra actually easier than other Pokemon. Because I remember with some other Pokemon I have backtracked like that.
And I want to give a shout out to Smash Math, because I was like trying to go to full Mega Punch PP and fight that hiker to begin with and getting frustrated with how inconsistent it was. And he was like, why don't you just cut the tree later? So that was actually Smash Math's suggestion. And that's one of the good reasons why I love this community that you've built, Scott. It's really cool that I can just, even when I'm just streaming casually to 3 people or 5 people on your Discord page, it's nice to be able to get feedback from people who also love the game.
Yeah. Yeah, getting other people's perspective on my play, like I've been lucky that I've had a bunch of YouTube comments that have helped me. They've just told me when I'm saying Venomoth is the wrong type and things like that. And I've learned a lot about the game because of that. And I think that it is really good to get other people's perspective on things, because sometimes you get stuck in these weird little personal biases. Like, I have to get through the Geodude trainer. Like, how can I solve that problem? When you don't realize that you can actually just walk around the problem and approach it from a completely different angle.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Especially when the first thing that came to mind for me was like, okay, make sure I'm full of health, make sure I line up my PP so I have enough Mega Punches. And yeah, sometimes it's easy to get caught in the details. You miss the forest through the trees, so to speak.
Yeah.
By the way,
that was
this section
a really
is a little
scary slowpoke.
Yeah. If we get confused too by confusion, it's kind of scary. You might think, oh, well, our attack stat's not that high, so we're not going to do that much to ourselves. Well, our attack stat is badge boosted from Brock, and our defense is also very low. So we actually hilariously do hit ourselves pretty hard if we hit ourselves in confusion.
There's also an interesting tension that's starting to come up, and we saw it a little bit there against some of the grass types, where you're using Body Slam on turn 1 sometimes because it has crit potential, but also paralysis potential. But then also you're switching over to using Seismic Toss. And I think this is one of the least intuitive things about playing Abracadabra and Alakazam. It's not always clear which move you should be using when you're not using a special move. So you're going up.
You see how much that self-destruct does?
Yeah. I see why you need Seismic Toss.
Yeah. I also picked up 4 repels, by the way, because I need a repel. Do you see how much the Geodude does? Yeah. So this is not. It's painful taking these resets to Graveler, and each one of these is pretty short resets, but the timeline is like, it's getting sketchier. Every one of these resets and the Great Brock split gets a little less secure.
Yeah, but you could have just picked up Rest and just healed there and let them self-destruct themselves. See, Rest, the best move.
Maybe I should have, honestly.
Maybe. I don't know, though. You take a lot of damage from the seismic from the self-destruct. If they go for it 2 times in a row, I don't know. It's hard.
That's the thing is you could take a really slow reset by using Rest, and then this is devastating, Scott.
Oh, no.
I hadn't saved recently, and if I had taken the blackout, I would have had to buy more repels and bike all the way over there.
Yeah.
So as painful as it is, we're just fighting this guy again.
You almost never want to blackout and rock tunnel in Gen 1 because of what you mentioned, the repels.
Yeah, and I bought 4 repels for this exact reason. Well, not the exact reason that I would take a blackout, but the exact reason that you can lose to him and you want to have an extra repel, because if you have to resume from a save, right, if you reset, then you might have to use a 4th repel.
Right.
But we're through now. Now I am not feeling good psychologically, right? Brock went great, but since then we've had a lot of messiness. That was my fault. I should have saved before that fight. But also it was pretty unlucky, so it's kind of both, right? It's a mistake and bad luck combining to make me less and less secure about my chances of actually hitting this 2-hour goal, which, while I kind of set it for myself arbitrarily, it feels achievable now in a way that it never felt before, and that pressure is on my back right now.
Yeah, if you had told me 4 years ago when I did my Abra run, if someone had commented on the video and just been like, I can do this in under 2 hours, I would have just laughed them out of the room. Absolutely not. No one can do that. That's ridiculous. But yeah, it's possible. It seems like it's possible, at least. I wanted to come back to this idea of the tension between Body Slam, Seismic Toss, and then if you're playing Kadabra or Alakazam, Dig. Those are sort of the 3 alternative moves that you have to Psychic. And I saw against the Gambler, you used Seismic Toss on the Growlithe and then Body Slam for the Vulpix. And I think that this is the least intuitive thing about playing these Pokemon. It's not always clear which move is the better move. Yep. Sometimes it's Body Slam for crit chance and paralysis and things like that, but sometimes you need Seismic Toss to knock out in less turns.
Yeah, Seismic Toss is really nice there for injuring the Doduo, by the way, to make it a better catch. But the Growlithe has higher defense than the Vulpix does, so I believe I actually needed Seismic Toss to get the 2-hit, as I used Teleport here. See, aren't we glad that we didn't teach Rest over Teleport? You see how useful that was?
Yeah, so good. Yeah, Teleport's, it's actually doing really well for you. I'm going back to confirm the damage range on that Growlithe. Yes, Body Slam does not 2-shot every time, so you have a chance to fail that range.
In some cases, like you were mentioning, it makes sense to go Body Slam first and then Seismic Toss afterwards for crit upside. And then, if it's still a guarantee with a low roll Body Slam plus a Seismic Toss, then you may as well take the upside.
Yep. But sometimes I'm sure that isn't the case, and it just makes sense to not move the cursor, because on 4 times speed, it will be slightly more efficient to just press A.
Mm-hmm. Well, the animation's faster for Body Slam too, so we would like to use it if we can.
And Surge is very easy, as he should be.
Mm-hmm. I have to say my bag management here is not impressing me. Like, I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm just a little slow. And I think that goes back to just the nerves that I'm already experiencing. But
I also find I always feel like I'm playing pretty well in the bag management sections, and then I go back and watch my footage, and I'm like, what am I doing? Like I'm wasting all these frames. I shouldn't be. I should be clicking faster. I think that is the one aspect of the solo challenges that it's not clear that it is a huge component of the runs, just how fast you're navigating all the menus. And really good players like you, Ike the Killer, Austin, I think you all put yourself like above and beyond other people who are weaker like me because your bag management is so good. Gym Leader Matt is another excellent player with trainer, yes, but also player. His bag management is also very good.
I think we have to say, though, that your bag management has also come a very long way. Like, I watched one of your old streams, and it's clear that, like, when you opened the bag, you thought the game was paused. Like, you're just opening it and just, just chilling, scrolling down, thinking, do I want to use this? Do I want to use that? Just kind of looking at stuff. It's like, dude, the clock is still going here.
It's ticking.
It's not like that anymore. At least, you're aware of it now, and you're going much faster than you used to.
I think it actually comes back to what you've been talking about like psychology, where like you make a little choice, like you want to be safe in Mount Moon. And for me, it's always been, I want to like actually get the video into production before the weekend so that like we have a release and the channel still exists. Mm-hmm. And for me, it's like, I was like, what if I accidentally like click on the wrong item and like use my rare candy on Charmander when I didn't want to? So I'm going to play like the timer is paused when my bag is open, just to ensure that I can actually finish the run. Mm-hmm. And that psychology has been something that's been really difficult to let go of in favor of just playing as fast as possible all the time.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Makes sense. By the way, we picked up a couple PP ups there. One of your favorite items.
Yes, definitely.
And
not
that's
as good as the PP Max, but very good.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, I threw you off.
I'll leave those jokes to you. But yes, Psychic is our only attacking move that we feel really good about using. Like, unlike Mr. Mime or some other Psychic types, we don't get Thunderbolt or Ice Beam or anything else that we really want on the set. You mentioned earlier that I kept Teleport until Lorelei, and yeah, because you have seen it used a few times, but also because we don't have like many useful moves to teach with Abra. As we see just the worst biking. I just hate this. Okay, but I did need the PP up because it really matters. Like, you need all the PP you can with Psychic, because it's by far our best move. And we're not just going to be using it for training. We're also going to be using it for the Elite Four, obviously. And you need to stash a lot of PP restoring items to even make it through. So it's rare for me, by the way, to use all three PP ups unless we're going for like Horn Drill or relying heavily on Fire Blast or something like that. But in this case, with Abra, I think it's actually worth it to use all three on Psychic.
Yeah. Even with Blizzard, you usually only need two if it's like very bad scenario.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
like
you can usually skip one that's out of the way.
Yeah, often fine.
Level 37.
Yeah.
Love that for this section.
It is good because you block wild encounters with repels. The game actually generates the wild encounter. It decides everything about the Pokemon, and then it chooses if it's going to put you into a battle with the Pokemon or not. You can actually see this if you play the game and watch Pokebite and the battle ram. You'll see the Pokemon getting populated into the ram while your repel is active, so you know when you would have had encounters.
That's fun. I know you talked about, like, you could even see if you would have gotten a shiny just to make yourself angry while you play.
I want to make a shiny detector for shinies that you didn't encounter. Like that one there, that was a shiny. You had a repel, sorry.
Could you mod Pokebite so that it actually fights through the repel if it's a shiny?
I don't know. I could definitely make a patch to the game that would do that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Erica, I assume this is pretty easy with Psychic, like two-shot the Tangela, one-shot both of the other Pokemon.
Yeah, basically nothing can go wrong here at this point. It's just the most convenient way to fight her. Typically,
Yeah.
it tends to be because you have to fly away from her. You even if you could have fought her a couple levels earlier, I'll go ahead and fight the biker boss and then go down that path and go through the Safari
Mhm.
Zone first if levels work out. Because I'd rather dig back out, end up being in Celdon where I want to be next to Erica, and then
Yeah.
that's perfect because I'm flying away from her anyway.
I was just noting because I have the root file, so I was looking through it, and I saw that you only have 7 more saves in the entire playthrough. So the bulk of your saving was earlier in the run. You didn't save in front of Erica. What's your next save?
Probably Rival 5, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see. All this training, thankfully, it can be the case with frail Pokemon that this training itself can actually be a little scary and you have to take certain saves beforehand. But you'll see with a training in Sylph here, it's just not the case. Stab Psychic, when you have 105 special, is just wrecking everything. Like, it's hilarious when you look at the damage ranges. A lot of times it's doing like 250% minimum roll.
This is also something I don't think I mentioned yet, but Abra is rank 17 out of all 151 Pokemon in terms of special stat. It's tied with Chansey. So there's only really elite Pokemon above it, like Vaporeon, Jolteon, Flareon, Omastar, Hypno, Haunter, and then all like Tentacruel, Magneton, Kadabra, and then legendaries as well as Gengar and Alakazam. I guess Executor's up there. Why is he up there?
Executor has great stats. You could tell because
Yeah.
it's super bulky. It just never attacks you with psychic moves in these games or grass moves.
It's like Barrage and Leech Seed.
Stomp.
Yeah,
By the way, Stomp is scary for Abra because, of course,
I
it
bet.
is.
That's actually another reason you're holding on to Seismic Toss. It's definitely for the Champion's Executor.
Oh, you think so?
I think so.
All right.
Maybe I'm wrong. We'll see. But I think it's for the Executor because I know that whenever I fight that thing with the Psychic type, it always feels so slow to knock it out. And Seismic Toss is often more reliable there. Whereas Body Slam,
Executor
as we
is
have been
scary.
seeing, yeah, Body Slam has been useful in these sections of the run. But it's like the tension is like maybe you're going to go for Body Slam against it because you want to get paralysis or you want to get a crit. I'm not entirely sure. This is Seismic Toss for sure. I also calculated the ranges on this before because I wanted to know. Going to Sylph allows you to get the 2 shots here with Seismic Toss, but if you didn't go and do that Sylph training before and you came right here to Koga's gym to beat Koga with Psychic, you would have to 3-shot all of these Drowsy using Seismic Toss.
Yeah, I think at first we thought of partial Sylph as only a strategy you do if you needed Sword Stance and couldn't fight the rival yet. But the more experience I've gotten, the more I've realized that it's just a great pattern to train. If it's easier to fight Koga before Rival 5, it's worth just taking a bunch of training in Sylph, digging out, fighting Koga, and then coming back to Rival 5 later.
Yeah, because the cumulative, like the total time lost really is the time walking back over to Sylph when you're going back in the future. And then the time that you spend digging out, as well as the time that you spend flying from one location to the next location.
Almost lost to the random juggler. The Hypnos are terrifying. It crit me, and then thankfully wasted a turn with Disable. But yeah, he's actually scarier than Koga, because Koga's not a problem. We outspeed, and just, it's easy.
The Venomoth is also, I believe, locked into Leech Life, so it cannot... can't even go for, like, double team. You just crit it.
Yeah, in this case, it doesn't get a chance. But yeah, even if it had gone for Leech Life, it's not a big problem. Just even though it's a physical move, just because it's so low. It's like what 30
Yeah,
base,
the damage range
30
on
base
is
power or
36.
something. It's
36% to 42% on Leech Life. And if it crits Abra, it does a maximum roll of 88%, which means Abra will survive.
And I
the damage
assume
range
I
from
still
Abra is
2-hit.
ridiculous.
I assume I still 2-hit, even though it heals a lot from that. But,
Abra is almost able to 1-hit with the maximum damage roll. It has 97% with its maximum damage roll against the Venomoth.
Yeah, so we were safe there even from a crit. Would have had to be a Gen 1 miss, and obviously we don't save for that kind of thing. By the way, just to tie a bow on your point earlier, the difference between digging out of Sylph and not digging out of Sylph is about 10 seconds, which is faster than any optional. So if you save even a single optional trainer by doing things in that order, it's worth taking the partial Sylph.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, this rival, he's often very scary for Pokemon. I have noticed that you did not use rare candies before him.
Yep.
One weird thing about this rival is that he is using the Vaporeon team, which is very uncommon in Yellow because you have to lose in the lab. But Abra can't win in the lab because it only has Teleport.
That was a brutal reset. Crit bite at the very last moment against the Vaporeon because we have to 3-shot it if we don't get a special drop.
Oh, this run is slipping through your fingers.
We're at 143. Like, I don't... maybe it's because I've been having fun. I don't feel like it's been an hour and 43 minutes, but it's been an hour and 43 minutes. We have less than 17 minutes left for me to hit the goal. And
I know.
In fighting Rival 5, it's very unclear if that's going to happen or not. And in fact, I'm definitely getting nervous and maybe a little frustrated at this point too.
How do you deal with that? The frustration or the nerves that come up in a playthrough when you get laid in and you're like, this is not going well?
I'd say that generally I have a very good temperament for this kind of thing. Like, I tend to be the kind of person who can focus on process over results. But like anyone, I have a tipping point, right? So we've already experienced some bad luck. Rival 2 didn't go very well. Rock Tunnel went very poorly. We've had just kind of random bad things happen to us. And then that reset on the very last Pokemon, it's tough, you know? I think I just have to remind myself to focus on the process, right? And then I'll even tell myself, you know, like, okay, if we don't get it this time, I'll try again next time. Now, by the time I got to the end of this run, I don't know if that's true. I think that, like, but by the time I'm at, like, suffering at the champion, by the way, the champion is hard for Abra. I was thinking, I don't know if I get it, if I don't get it. I didn't know what I was going to do if I'd ever run this Pokemon again, you know? Fail or success. And so
before this run,
before
this run, did you ever feel like you wanted to throw in the towel and not do another Abra run?
No, I was determined. I think the thing that can really break your spirit is if you get close and it feels like that was the time that it was supposed to happen and it didn't.
Yeah.
And that's how
like
this
the
one
champion
feels, right?
crits you or something and you're like, oh, like that was supposed to be the attempt and now it's gone.
So as the audience, I'm not going to answer the question for you yet because honestly, I was to the point where I'm like, this is the kind of soul-crushing Shakespearean tragedy type of a scenario that if I don't make it, I'm not running it again. You know, I felt that way when I was running it. And I am a fan of Shakespearean tragedies, you know? So am I Hamlet?
Sometimes the hero has to lose. And I think that, like, I've seen that sentiment come up in my comment section before where it's like all of these solo challenges, like you're always winning. And it's nice sometimes when the Pokemon just can't have success. It can't beat the game for whatever reason. And I see here from level 48, I believe.
Yep, to 58.
Yeah, 48 to 58. You're going to use candies. This is kind of I don't know if I've ever used candies outside of the Saffron City Pokemon Center. Why is this the perfect moment for the candies?
Because when you smash A, it puts you on the bike.
Yeah, okay, sure. Avoid my question by answering a different question, which is very interesting.
Sorry, that wasn't your question?
Why in the run should you use 10 candies right here? Like, what is this?
Using candies before Sabrina, not candies.
Okay.
You know, but yeah, it's because I'm one-shotting the Abra like 95% or something like that.
Okay.
This can be a very slow, awful reset if you get your accuracy dropped and then end up losing in a prolonged fight. So I wanted to avoid that. And I thought it made a lot of sense to do all my training first with a medium slow growth rate. Oh, God. You see this right now.
Sorry, yeah. It cracked me up. I couldn't hold it in.
Yeah. This happened because I did things out of order. And so I needed to teach cut to Charmander and strength to Charmander. So Dig was in the third slot instead of the second slot. All because it wasn't easy for me to fight Rival 5 early. So I didn't have Lapras yet, right? So it is a good optimization that becomes a terrible optimization, and I should have just picked up Squirtle if I'm going to make a mistake like that. Yeah,
messes with your muscle memory.
Yeah.
Those
Blaine is also
really
terrifying right afterwards. It goes very poorly at a lower level against Blaine.
Makes sense. I assume that the Arcanine and the Rapidash will just do ridiculous damage with their physical moves.
Yeah, even quick attack, it's a weak move, but it does a lot to Abra, especially if it crits, and especially if we're at a lower level than this, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yep,
31 to 37% damage if it crits with quick attack.
that's a lot. And he's got bulky
Well,
Pokemon too, right? So if you're not at least two-shotting, you have no chance.
yeah, and at this level, Abra two-shots everything on his team.
Hmm.
And you can get crits for one hits on all of them.
Yeah. So with the medium slow growth rate, it wasn't too bad for us to get to like level 45. You mentioned no candies before rival 5. Like that was pretty doable, but we really needed our power spike before Blaine and Sabrina.
That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
What about Giovanni? Is he a threat at all?
Not too bad. Stab Psychic manages the Nidos. So,
Mm-hmm.
and we're so fast that you can see we're almost as fast as Lance's Aerodactyl at this point. Now, we can lose because we're not one-shotting the Persian. And I'm pretty sure Slash one-shots us. So we can lose, but we're not likely to get walled here.
Actually, Slash does not one-shot all the time. It sometimes one-shots and it sometimes doesn't.
Okay, it's a range.
It is.
In this case, he guard spec'd. So
Of course he
we're
does.
sitting
He has
pretty
to.
now.
He is sponsored by Guardspec.
Yeah, the Nidos are quite bulky, so it's not that easy to one-shot them. Even with super effective moves a lot of times, but because Psychic is also a stab super effective move, there's no chance they survive. Oh my god, you see me using the spinny pads?
Yeah, that is messing with me lately because it's faster in Fire Red.
Those were not
spinny
intentional
pads.
spinny pads. That was,
I know.
that was accidental.
In Gen
pads.
1, the spinny pads are very slow, but in Gen 3, the spinny pads are very fast.
We have to
love
two-shot the execute. Getting poisoned is preferable to getting paralyzed.
Yeah, stun spores. Is it a reset if you get stun spored?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. That's usually the case. I also assume that if you get a special drop from that from the what's it called? The Kadabra, this fight could go bad.
Yeah, there are things that can go wrong there for sure. The Champions team in general is not easy for Psychic types because he has 2 Psychic types on his team, especially like once they execute becomes an Executor. Executor and Alakazam are not easy to get through, which is why even though we have great stats for the late game and like our special attack and special defense are very high, right? So you'd think, oh, well, you're going to crush the league. That's really only true until the champion, right?
Right.
Against Lorelei, we're equipped, and against other... Oh, gosh. Okay. I spent so long in the menu here. This is painful to watch, Scott, and it's going to get worse.
At least you didn't dig out. At least you didn't dig out.
Just wait. It's going to get bad.
Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it.
It's going to get bad, Scott.
No. No.
Scott, I have to have that candy. I can't go without
That's
the candy.
so painful.
I can't.
Yeah. You are doing the right thing, though.
If I don't have the candy, I get devastated by Sand Slash. Devastated, Scott. I went in on my first attempt at level 62 against the Sand Slash, almost 63. I thought that would be fine in my first attempt. I was wrong. In comical fashion, I went back and looked at this. You ready? I did 90% to the Sand Slash. It hit back with Earthquake. Did not crit. One-shot me from full health.
Yeah. I think you did do the right thing, though. You went back through the further in ladder. Sometimes, I used to go out the front door again, then come back in. You have to push both boulders in that case. Whereas if you do the routing that you did here, you only have to push the one boulder.
And I jumped off the bike. I've been on the bike since the Mew race. And I've been off the bike since this run, too. Or out on it, rather. I've been on the bike this whole time. Post Mew race and post this run. But... I made a practical decision, right? And I'm not, one mentality might say, well, you should be strong and go back with nerves of steel and go push the boulder on the bike again, but then the other mentality is more practical, right? Which is, hey, I'm not playing my best right now. I'm nervous. I can feel the nerves. We're going to make the best and just go without the bike and live with the results.
Yep. Okay, talk me through the Lorelei strategy. It looks like you're going to teach Mimic in the place of Teleport because we no longer need Teleport for the Overworld. And then 1 Candy to 62. What needs to happen against Lorelei for this to be successful?
We just need to not get frozen or crit by takedown. and we should be fine. Lorelei's not too bad because the Slowbro is not that scary with Surf, and we're setting up Amnesias.
Okay.
So Lorelei has to get really lucky to beat you. You can lose, of course. Like, you can get frozen, she can crit you, but you can crit her, and then she can crit you back. But as long as we don't crit again on the Lapras, we should be fine.
Yep.
And we crit again on the Lapras.
Well, so this is a very like generic Lorelei fight. Just get through the first two Pokemon, mimic Amnesia, set up, crush everything else.
Yeah, this is probably like a 90% victory, kind of a maybe 80 to 90%.
So again, more bad luck after Brock.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a very frustrating loss. And a lot of these losses have been to the final Pokemon too, right? We lost to the Lapras. We lost earlier to the final Vaporeon on Rival 5's team. These have not just been resets post-Brock. They've been very painful resets. This will not, however, be a reset.
No. I did look at the damage ranges here, and they are all 100%. So I guess a Gen 1 miss, maybe? Like, how much does strength do?
Crit
not
strength
enough.
would probably
crit
do it.
Crit strength would win. Also, crit submission has a chance of knocking out. It could also fail.
Even though it's resisted?
Even though it's resisted, yeah, it has a chance.
That's hilarious.
109% damage at maximum roll.
Agatha's not too bad. We
Yeah.
one-shot all of her Pokemon. We're faster than all of her Pokemon. That's pretty good. Lance is scary if you're at a lower level.
There is a chance on Agatha to miss the damage range on the Gengar.
Yeah.
The final one. But
even still, pretty unlikely to lose. But here
Yeah.
we have I think about an 80% chance to one-shot the Dragonair. And if we don't hit that range, we could get Thunder Waved and things can fall apart. Assuming we don't get frozen or Thunder Waved, then it becomes trivial because generic strategy, of course, right? We take Ice Beam.
Yep. Mimic Ice Beam, yep.
All right, Scott, 5 minutes to be the champion.
Yeah. I think you're going to do it, honestly. But by how much? Like, is it... right now... Oh, rest. Let's go.
Your favorite move.
My favorite move in the place of Seismic Toss. Interesting. So you're going to Body Slam the Executor then, I assume.
I'm going to Psychic it and get drops.
Special drops.
Drop.
Okay.
Yep.
That is another way to do it.
If we fail that range and we get Earthquaked, it's an instant reset.
Yeah.
Devastating damage. I think it does like 90% to us or something like that.
86 to 101%.
There you go.
So yeah, 90. And Body Slam, this is a 3-hit.
Yeah.
It's pretty slow.
Technically, Seismic Toss 2 shots there, but
Yeah.
here I go for Hypnosis. Unfortunately, I did get Leech Seeded, and that's going to slow this fight down quite a bit. But with Hypnosis, we can win, right? Now, originally, I was trying this without Rest on the set and just trying to get through without it. I kept taking late resets, just barely not having enough juice. One thing that I'm kind of banking on here is that the Ninetales can go for Fire Spin and wake me up quickly. In this case, it doesn't do it.
Now, why would it do it when you need it?
Yeah. And I'm on low health here. It's not great. I'm trying to get to full health and get a long sleep in so then I can hit with Psychic and have a lot of health.
Yep.
But he keeps waking up when I wake up.
Very frustrating.
And quick attacks on the turn it's about to go down. So now I'm in the same kind of awkward position against the Magneton. 9 health, 9 damage taken for a Leech Seed, so I have to heal there.
This thing hitting with Screech, is that ever good?
5 health. I can't put it back to
God.
sleep. This is not a good position, Scott.
Yeah. This looks like one of my very old runs, so it's nice to see
Devastating.
this kind of thing.
It's devastating, Scott. That's like it was over a 1 minute. It was close to 2 minute reset there. We're down to 3 minutes left to be the champion.
My confidence that I had when I saw you beat Lance is eroding now.
Yeah.
I did see
It's
that you
not
played
looking
around
good.
with the idea of mimicking Recover from the Alakazam.
Yeah, I tried that, but it wasn't working for me.
Okay.
Because then I didn't have Hypnosis, right? So I was trying to
Yeah.
recover and I was getting caught in a healing loop in a different way. This time, at least we're not hit with Leech Seed. So we're not
True.
taking that damage every turn.
Leech Seed is the reason that the Executor is awful.
Screech is scary, Scott. We got Screech. We hate getting Screech. We're at -3 defense now, and the final Vaporeon does no quick attack. And it does massive damage. We're 3-shotting.
Oh!
If it had gone for quick attack, it would have gotten us.
that damage range right before the end, where the Vaporeon survived on a small amount of HP. Oh, made my heart skip. Okay, so 157, 54, 21 resets, untold blackouts in the early game. Level 66. Game time, 7 hours, 12 minutes. How do you feel about this run?
Oh, I felt like a huge weight was off my back when I finally did it, but it was kind of euphoric as well, you know? Like, it feels incredible when you put that much effort into something and then it finally pays off. It really, really does. It makes it all worth it.
Yeah. What surprised you most about this Abra run? Like, what do you think is like one of the least intuitive things that was just shocking to find out?
I think definitely the champion fight was kind of jarring, and I should have seen it coming, maybe because it's similar running other psychic types, that it just doesn't go very well against the champion when you crush the rest of the game, because it's such a good offensive typing, and then you really get without a setup move especially, and you don't have any coverage moves, it's really hard to get through the champion's team when you're a frail special attacker using psychic and you don't have Thunderbolt, you don't have Ice Beam. Body Slam hits really weak. Like, I needed a crit to 2-shot the Alakazam. Normally it's a 3-shot, right? I knew that it was going to be tough at the champion, but I didn't know how tough. And so finding out that I actually had to do more training than I thought in the mid game just to get to a reasonable level to roll the dice at the champion, it's still sketchy at 65. That surprised me. I kind of thought Abra's late game was going to be stronger than that.
I remember early on into my channel, I had a similar experience with psychic types. I remember playing Starmie and just like the champion didn't feel as easy as I thought he would. And I did an old unreleased Mewtwo run where I also struggled with the champion. It's like, this is supposed to be just like the most brainless Pokemon where you just press A and it wins. But like the champion still he's kind of good.
Honestly, even with the like optimized route that we did for Mewtwo, I think it was still about a coin flip at the champion, which is crazy when you think about it, right? It's a half hour of a playthrough just to get a coin flip at the end. Yeah. Because you're not saving for the champion with Mewtwo. Like, any reset is unacceptable.
Yeah, of course. It's like, why would you ever save with Mewtwo?
Yeah. One thing just reflecting on this run, though, Scott, that I want to mention is I did mention it earlier, but the different people who were there with me, like Perky Penguin, Smash Math, Redriosi, Elite Four Alex, and many others. I'm not going to remember all of them off the top of my head. Salamence, actually Karisora. Like, there was a rotating cast of your regular characters in your Discord channel that were checking in on Abra. And actually, as the days went by, for a while, I mentioned I did this for about 3 weeks. For a while, I was going every day. And over time, more people, not less people, started watching. I thought that people were going to get sick of seeing the Brock split with Abra, and that like after a couple days of this, people would just stop checking in. But actually, it was the opposite. More and more people wanted to see if we could do it. So even when I did this run and I had the nerves going, I think it helped a bit that I had an audience. This whole run was done on your Discord with people watching. And it adds pressure in one way because everyone was like, you know, I probably had 5 to 10 people watching. But in another way, it felt great to have the support, you know, and it felt like a kind of community effort that like we did it with Abra.